Hello and welcome to Notes, a podcast created and hosted by me, Luke Lynch. Today we're going to be looking at the official charts from when it started, which was 1952, to the current era, which is currently 2021. The way I'm going to be structuring this is a little bit different though, because the official charts started in 1952 in November, first week of November. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to take the best song from the first week of November from the official charts from each year and list them off that way. Anyway, kicking it off from the 1950s. So 1950s was also the beginning of the official charts, as I've just said. So there wasn't many entries. Like, for instance, this first one is a top 12. 12, which is mental. But it started off with Al Martino taking the number one spot with Here in My Heart. Also, throughout the 1950s, it moved from being a top 12 to a top 30, which is over double, which is just insane to me, like improving that on just music alone. But in 1953, it was also still a top 12, but with Frankie Lane taking the top spot with Answer Me. In 1954, it moved to a top 20, with the top spot going to Vera Lynn with My Son, My Son. The Johnston Brothers took number one in 1955 with Hernando's Highway. In 1956, though, Frankie Lane came back with a song, A Woman in Love, taking number one. Also in this year, Elvis got his song Hound Dog to number two. Also, in 1956, the charts went from being a top 20 to a top 30. This is where it peaked in the 1950s and where it sat for the rest of the years. In 1957, the number one went to Crickets with That'll Be the Day. Also, Elvis Presley came back with another number two, which is an amazing way to start off at November. In 1953, Tommy Edwards took number one with It's All in the Game. And in 1959, to round off the decade, Cliff Richard and the Shadows came in at number one with Travelin' Light. Now, moving on to the 1960s, we had Elvis taking a number one spot with It's Now or Never. Plus, in 1960, it went from being a top 30 to a top 50, which is a massive improvement for the official charts. Moving on to 1961, we had Walking Back to Happiness by Helen Shapiro. Then heading into 1962, we had Tornadoes taking the top spot with Telstar. In 1963, we had Jerry and the Pacemakers with You'll Never Walk Alone. Also, we had an appearance from the Beatles, with them taking number two with She Loves You. In 1964, we had Sandy Shaw taking number one with There's Always Something There to Remind Me. Next up, we had the Rolling Stones with them taking number one with their song Get Off of My Cloud in 1965. Taking number one in 1966 was The Four Tops with Reach Out and I'll Be There. In 1967, the Bee Gees took number one with Massachusetts. In 1968, we had Joe Cocker grabbing that number one spot with A Little Help from My Friends. And to wrap up the decade of the 1960s, we have the Archies taking number one with Sugar Sugar. Now, moving on to the 1970s, starting off with, of course, 1970, we had Matthew Southern Comfort taking number one with Woodstock. Moving on to 1971, we had Slade with 'Cause I Love You. Gilbert O'Sullivan took number one in 1972 with Claire. In 1973, David Cassidy took number one with Daydreamer / Puppy Song. The number one in 1974 went to Ken Booth with Everything I Own. In 1975, the number one went to David Bowie with Space Oddity. In 1976, number one went to Pussycat with Mississippi. In 1977, number one went to ABBA with Name of the Game. In 1978, number one was taken by John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John with Summer Nights. Also during this year, the charts went from being just a top 50, which is mental, to a top 75, a huge 25 place increase, which is mental. And wrapping up the decade, in 1979, was Lennon Martell, who took number one with One Day at a Time. Right, now we move on to the 1980s. The first number one for 1980 was by Barbra Streisand with Women in Love. In 1981, the number one went to Dave Stewart and Barbara Gaskin with It's My Party. In 1982, the number one went to Eddie Grant with I Don't Wanna Dance. In 1983, the number one went to Billy Joel with Uptown Girl. But also, during this year of the charts, it went from being a top 5 to the all-time peak, which is currently, right now, a top 100, which is insane, going from straight from a top 12, and in 30 years, just about, to a top 100. Amazing stuff for the official charts. In 1984, the number one went to Chaka Khan with I Feel You. In 1985, the number one was Taken, actually, by Jennifer Rush with The Power of Love. In 1986, the number 1 was taken by a movie. It was Take My Breath Away, which was the love theme from Top Gun by Berlin. In 1987, we had the Bees Gees taking number 1 with You Win Again. But also in this year, one of my favourite artists, Rick Astley, took the number 3 spot with Whenever You Need Somebody. But also earlier in this year, he released an iconic song, which is now known by many young people, many old people, just anyone that gets memes, gets just old music of Never Gonna Give You Up. An all-time classic, and I love the song. I'm not gonna lie, it's a good song. In 1988, the number 1 went to Enya with Orinoco. I can't read. Orinoco Flow. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Orinoco Flow. That one. And then wrapping up the decade, which is such an amazing decade in my opinion, because a bunch of bangers were released. Of course, I can't list them all, but so many were released. But the number 1 for the last one went to Lisa Stansfield with Around the World. Right, moving straight on to the 1990s, because that's how we do it, decade by decade. We had the first number 1, kicking it off straight away, Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers. In 1991, we had Vic Reeves and the Wonder Stuff with Dizzy. In 1992, we had Boyz II Men taking number 1 with End of the Road. In 1993, we had Meatloaf with I'd Do Anything for Love, but I won't do that. A good title, I've got to agree with that one. In 1994, we had Panto Banton with Baby Come Back. In 1995, we had Robson and Jerome with I Believe Up on the Roof. And during this year/week, number 2 was Oasis with a classic that everybody knows, I'm sure everybody knows, was Wonderwall. And then number 3, a classic song again, if you're into meme culture or other things, was Coolio featuring LV with Gangsta's Paradise. In 1996, we had Robson and Jerome again with What Becomes of a Broken Heart. Also in this year, we had the Spice Girls with Say You'll Be There. In 1997, we had Aqua taking the number 1 with Barbie Girl. Gotta admit, don't know why they made the song, but they got a number 1 out of it. Can't complain. In 1988, we had Cher with Believe. And then wrapping up a beautiful decade, we had Jerry Halliwell with Lift Me Up. Moving straight on to the 2000s, we kicked off the decade with Westlife getting number 1 with My Love. In 2001, we had Afro Man taking number 1 with Because I Got High. In 2002, we had DJ Sammy and You Now featuring Do with Heaven. In 2003, we had Fat Man Scoop / Crocklin Clan, my mistake there, taking number 1 with Be Faithful. Also in this year, we had the Black Eyed Peas with Where Is the Love at number 4. In 2004, we had Eminem taking number 1 with Just Lose It. In 2005, we had Westlife taking number 1 again with You Raise Me Up. Also had the Arctic Monkeys at number 2, Pharrell Williams at number 3, and Craig David at number 4. A bunch of artists that are still known throughout this modern day era. In 2006, the number 1 was taken by Fed Legrand with Put Your Hands Up for Detroit. During this year, we also had the likes of Beyonce and My Chemical Romance in the charts. Heading into 2007, we had Leona Lewis taking number 1 with Bleeding Love. Now, 2008, odd year. Very odd year, in my opinion anyway. Odd year. Because we had X Factor finalists taking number 1 with their song Hero. What was X Factor finalists meant to specify? It made no sense to me. But also in the charts for this year, we had Girls Aloud, Pink, Kings of Leon, and Katy Perry. Then heading into the final year of the decade, we had Cheryl Cole taking number 1 with Fight for This Love. Right, heading straight into the final decade, that is the 2010s. Or the 2010s, whatever way you want to say it. But it's the final decade. Got to round it off with something good. And I've got to say, there are plenty of bangers in this. We had Rihanna taking the first number 1 with Only Girl in the World, with Cheryl Cole being at number 2, having Katy Perry with the banger that was Firework at number 4. Bruno Mars took number 5, and CeeLo Green with Forget You at number 6. In 2011, we had Professor Green featuring Emily Sandé with Read All About It. Also a classic that was in the charts that I'm sure most people, probably everyone, has heard of. At number 7 came Sexy and I Know It by LMFAO. In 2012, we had Robbie Williams grabbing that top spot with Candy. Also at number 3, we had Wiley, Skepta, Jamie and Ms. D with Can You Hear Me. In 2013, we had The Monster by Eminem featuring Rihanna in the charts. We also had the likes of Lorde, Fatboy Slim, One Direction, One Republic, Tiny Temper and Katy Perry in the charts at this point. Moving on to 2014, we had Ed Sheeran with Thinking Out Loud, taking that top spot. And in 2015, we had Adele with Hello. Also in the charts this year, we had Justin Bieber, Drake, Sam Smith, KDA and Tiny Temper, Beyonce, One Direction, and Rhythm. Just big names. Just amazing to me. In 2016, we had Shout Out to My Ex by Little Mix, we also had at number 4, Starboy by The Weeknd and Daft Punk. Also, Bruno Mars was up there with number 6 with 24 Karat Magic. In 2017, we had oh my, that's a very difficult name. Camila Cabello, featuring Young Thug, taking number 1 with Havana. At number 2 was Post Malone featuring 21 Savage with Rockstar. Personally, one of my favourite songs. Also had Marshmello featuring Khalid with Silence. In 2018, we had Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper with Shallow. At number 2, we had Little Mix featuring Nicki Minaj with Woman Like Me. At number 4 was a banger, a big banger by Dave featuring Fredo with Funky Friday. And at number 5 was Marshmello again featuring Bastille with Happier. And wrapping up the decade was Tones and I with Dance Monkey. During this decade, the rise of UK rap was absolutely immense. It would be going on for years. And it's just astonishing to see how much rap there is, and it's becoming a modern day thing, and I love the genre. It's amazing to me. So I'm just glad to see all them names up there in the charts and doing well. Finish up the podcast, we have a year a lot of people don't like to talk about. I mean, I understand it was a terrible year. Corona happened, stuff was shut down, people couldn't go to festivals in the summer. It was all terrible. But we did have great music being released, so you couldn't really complain. At number 1 for 2020, we had Ariana Grande with Positions, alongside people like Pop Smoke, Heady One, Miley Cyrus, KSI, Craig David, and Justin Bieber. Now we move to the current year, 2021. Now, because of the time I'm recording this, of course, it hasn't reached November yet, so I can't stick with what I was doing with first week of November for each year. So I'm just going to give you the recent charts that were out. So this is a charts from May, about mid-May. Put it that way. At the number 1, we have Tion Wayne and Russ Millions. Sorry, I messed that up. Russ Millions with Body. This song was competing alongside some huge artists like Lil Nas X, Doja Cat, Justin Bieber, Billie Eilish, Joel Corey, and so many more. The evolution of the charts is actually just a superb thing to see. In my opinion, it's amazing. There's a lot of bangers that are in the olden days. You can sift through as many as you want. You'll find some terrible ones. You'll find some good ones. But overall, it's music. Something that we can bop to, we can have a bit of a vibe to, just chill out, relax to some music, have an absolute sesh with music, have anything with music. I can't wait for the future and the bangers that are going to come to be. My name is Luke Lynch. This has been Notes. I appreciate you listening or watching, depending on what you're looking at. Also, quick mention, if you are looking for any of the songs that I have listed, the number 1s, I have made a playlist of all of them. They are down in the description as a link on YouTube. So anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Adios.